Many actors get typecast or spend their careers playing the one thing that they're best at. Ralph Fiennes did the opposite and was somehow great at everything. After nearly a decade in theater, Spielberg cast him in Schindler's List, where he delivered one of the most terrifying villain performances ever. Yet, soon after, he made audiences fall in love with him in romances like The English Patient, just to scare them again in Red Dragon. He was just as good in smaller films as he was in franchises, especially as Voldemort in Harry Potter and M in James Bond. And just when you have him pegged as a serious dramatic actor, he proves he can be just as great in comedy with In Bruges and The Grand Budapest Hotel. He began directing, returned to theater again and again, and even tried action roles later in his career. Because for Ralph Fiennes, it was always about acting itself and the love he had for exploring every corner of it. This is the story of an actor who never played just one role and never stopped surprising us. This is Ralph Fiennes.
But before we begin, let's take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Displate. No, this is not an ASMR channel. I'm very sick and I lost my voice. Displate is a unique metal poster designed to capture all your passions and stay looking sharp. They have over 2 million artworks available in the Displate catalog from officially licensed designs from the likes of Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring, Warhammer, and many more iconic brands and franchises. But now, Displate is more customizable than ever with their brand new product, Custom Displate. Turn any image into a premium metal poster easily and quickly. Just upload a photo, some artwork, or a graphic to get an instant preview and place your order within minutes. Until now, this feature lived behind the Displate Club, but now it's open to everyone so you can print what you love. One of the best parts about Displate is their magnet mounting system. It's tool-free, safe for walls, and super quick. Each display comes with a magnet kit, so everything you need comes in the box. No drilling, no holes, and most importantly, no frustration. It takes seconds to mount your display with a sticker leaf and a magnet, and you can swap displays really quickly, anytime you want. Just take a metal poster off and slap another one onto the same magnet. The holiday season is right around the corner. Skip boring gifts and get a gift that gets you or surprise someone who shares your fandom. Use the discount link in the description to automatically apply a discount at checkout, or use code FILMSTACK to get 33% off 1 to 2 displays, 38% off 3 displays, or 40% off 4 and more displays. Each Displate order supports our channel in creating more high-quality content for you. Thank you to Displate for sponsoring this video. And now, back to the video.
Before Schindler's List, Ralph Fiennes was a theater actor through and through. He expected to spend his entire career on stage, a place he'd return to often even after becoming a movie star. It was on stage that he built that intense presence directors love, the kind that fills the back row of theaters but becomes even better on camera, where close-ups let his eyes do the heavy lifting. Film didn't replace theater for him. It was simply another way to practice the thing he loved most, acting. Born in Ipswich in 1962, Fiennes grew up in a very artsy family. His father was a photographer, his mother was a writer, and 4 of his 5 siblings would go on to become an actor, a director, a filmmaker, and even a composer. Fiennes originally studied painting at the Chelsea College of Arts, but at 20, he switched to acting and enrolled in the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. It was there that his love for Shakespeare only grew, and after graduating in 1985, the first 3 major productions he landed were all Shakespeare. What started off as smaller parts in Twelfth Night and A Midsummer Night's Dream turned into starring roles almost immediately. By the following year, he was already playing Romeo at Regent's Park. In 1987, he performed 3 shows at the Royal National Theatre, and a year later he joined the Royal Shakespeare Company, taking on roles in Much Ado About Nothing, Troilus and Cressida, and King Lear. They weren't background roles, they were emotionally demanding major roles that required complete command of the stage. Critics regularly singled him out for his intensity, and by the early 90s, he had exactly what most theater actors dream of. And yet, he left. As more film scripts started coming his way, the technical side of filmmaking fascinated him. He loved watching how shots were built, how crews worked, and how different acting had to be for the camera. So in 1991, he left the Shakespeare Company and stepped into film for the first time at age 29. His first couple of on-screen roles didn't draw much attention. He appeared in the TV movie A Dangerous Man, Lawrence After Arabia, an unofficial sequel of Lawrence of Arabia, and then starred in Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, a romance film based on a book that gets adapted way too often. Neither film reviewed well, but they were far more important to his career than anyone realized because Steven Spielberg saw them. Spielberg was a massive fan of the original Lawrence of Arabia, and he later said he was struck by the dark sexuality Fiennes brought to Wuthering Heights. That alone convinced him to cast Fiennes in Schindler's List. Released in 1993, Schindler's List follows German businessman Oskar Schindler, played by Liam Neeson, and his efforts to save Jewish lives during the Holocaust by hiring them for his factory. Fiennes played the film's villain, Amon Goth, the SS officer overseeing the construction of a nearby concentration camp. It was a very dark and sickening role, one the film actually toned down compared to the real Goth, who people said was not human at all. To prepare, Fiennes gained 28 pounds by drinking Guinness, studied newsreels, and spoke with Holocaust survivors who had seen Goth firsthand. One survivor who had known Goth even met Fiennes on set, took one look at him in uniform, and began shaking uncontrollably. Even Fiennes said playing this role had a disturbing effect on him, but he loved working on the film and with Spielberg, finding the experience very exciting, especially seeing how passionate Spielberg was about the technical side of filmmaking. And Fiennes' performance was chilling. Spielberg said Fiennes' audition convinced him immediately, pointing to the way moments of kindness would move across his eyes and then instantly run cold. Critics agreed and called it one of the greatest villain performances in film history.
The young will ask with wonder about this day. Today is history, and you are part of it.
Schindler's List was a massive hit, won 7 Oscars including Best Picture, and earned Fiennes an Oscar nomination. Yet to this day, it's still shocking that he didn't win. But it didn't matter. It was the perfect beginning for his film career and an unusual one. Playing such a horrifying villain can define an actor forever. But when asked whether he was worried about being typecast and people only seeing Amon Goth in him, Fiennes just shrugged and said he thinks he'll be fine. And the decade that followed proved he wasn't just right, he was unstoppable as he hopped from genre to genre. The years after Schindler's List were when audiences realized Ralph Fiennes wasn't going to be one kind of actor. In 1994, he starred in Quiz Show, directed by Robert Redford, playing Charles Van Doren, the new contestant at the center of the 1950s 21 quiz show scandal. To prepare, Fiennes watched old footage of Van Doren and even tricked the real man into helping him, pretending to be a lost driver so he could study the man's voice and mannerisms. Critics loved just how much pain he hid behind the character's calm and well-mannered exterior.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Dad. You'll be a...
And just like that, he proved Schindler's List wasn't a one-off. 1995 was even better. He dove into sci-fi with Catherine Bigelow's Strange Days, playing a sleazy ex-cop who deals in illegal recordings of memories. James Cameron later said Fiennes made the character sexier and more charismatic than they intended, which let the film hit much harder emotionally since he was easier to root for. The film bombed, but critics loved him in it, and he followed it by returning to theater. He starred in Hamlet, which ran in London and then on Broadway, giving a raw and magnetic performance that won him the Tony Award for Best Leading Actor. At this point, his range was starting to become difficult to define, but nothing prepared audiences for his next leap. In 1996, he starred in The English Patient as a badly burned World War II cartographer whose tragic past unfolds in flashbacks. It was the exact opposite of Amon Goth, restrained, delicate, grief-stricken. Fiennes spent 5 hours in makeup every day and even suggested applying full-body burns on days only his head would be shown, just to stay in character. Although not everyone liked it, the film was another huge hit, winning 9 Oscars and earning Fiennes his second nomination, this time for Best Actor. For a moment, it looked like he was settling into romance, except Fiennes doesn't settle. He followed it with Oscar and Lucinda in 1997, another romance film except it didn't land. But with the success he had been having so far, it was only a matter of time he was asked to join the Avengers. Except it was the 1998 film The Avengers, the infamous British spy comedy that became the biggest flop of his career, and yet he took pride in it, joking that it was a badge of honor to have a real flop like this on his resume. That same year, he lent his voice for the first time in The Prince of Egypt as Ramses, one of the only 5 cast members to perform both the speaking and singing voices. It was one of the first hints that he could disappear into animation just as well as live action, but it would take a while before we'd see him commit to more. He ended the decade with 3 smaller films. In Sunshine, he played 3 generations of a Hungarian Jewish family across the 20th century. The End of the Affair was a romance film set in World War II with Julianne Moore. And Onegin was another romance film, but it was directed by his sister Martha, had music composed by his brother Magnus, and his sister Sophie was also involved in it. None of these films did well commercially, and he received no Oscar nominations for them. People were falling in love with him in romance films and not seeing Goth in him anymore. He even voiced Jesus in the animated film The Miracle Maker. Hard to think of a bigger 180 than that. And 2002 proved he was still too hard to pinpoint by starring in 3 very different roles. He starred in Spider, a psychological thriller directed by David Cronenberg. Fiennes played a mentally ill man released from an institution and unraveling his childhood memories. Cronenberg accepted the job after seeing a note that Fiennes was interested, showing how much respect Fiennes had already earned in the industry. He barely speaks in the film but conveys more through silence than most actors do in monologues. The movie didn't make much money, but critics loved him in it. That same year, he starred in Red Dragon, making his return to a proper villain role. It's a prequel to The Silence of the Lambs where he plays Francis Dollarhide, the serial killer known as the Tooth Fairy. Fiennes spent months gaining muscle to try to somewhat match the character's bodybuilder physique, and his massive dragon tattoo took 8 hours to apply each day. He said it was weird because he had to lie on a massage table naked for all those hours while he had 5 people scribble all over his back, legs, and butt. To understand the character, he read disturbing memoirs written by real serial killers, something he later admitted got inside his head in ways he didn't expect. But the performance was terrifying and transformative, exactly the kind of villain no one thought he'd do again after Goth, but one everyone expected he'd do so well. So it only made sense that he followed that film with Made in Manhattan, a Jennifer Lopez rom-com just months later, a film he openly said he regretted making. But in a weird way, it was the perfect year to represent his early career. One moment he was starring in an art house psychological thriller, the next he was playing a serial killer in a higher budget film, and then suddenly he was the romantic lead in a studio comedy. The 90s proved he had range, the early 2000s proved how unpredictable his career would be, and the craziest part, he was just getting started. After the 90s and early 2000s proved Ralph Fiennes could act in anything, the next stretch of his career showed something else. He would act in anything. Even his biggest fans weren't sure what he'd show up in next. 2005 was the busiest year of his career, starring in 6 films. He had a small supporting role in The Chum Scrubber. Chromophobia was another film directed by his sister Martha. In The White Countess, he played a blind American diplomat and spent time with the Royal Society for the Blind to study their daily routines. But his best drama that year was The Constant Gardener, where he played a British diplomat in Kenya who uncovers a conspiracy behind his wife's murder. Critics called it some of his most subtle and heartbreaking acting in film.
Good of you to tell me, Sandy. Can't have been easy.
And then, within the same year, he swung to the opposite extreme with 2 villain roles. First was Lord Victor Quatermain in Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, a fun, over-the-top voice performance that proved he had real comedic timing and a natural talent for animation. But the real villain role that year, one that opened an entirely new chapter of his career, was Voldemort in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. He originally wasn't even interested in the role. He barely knew the books and didn't realize how massive the franchise already was. His sister Martha convinced him to take it, and it ended up being perfect. He struggled at first with playing someone so inhuman, but found an approach that grounded the evil a little. His role in the 4th film is small but absolutely pivotal, and he devours the scenes he's in, instantly terrifying a whole new generation of moviegoers. This was his first recurring franchise role, and he kept returning with Order of the Phoenix in 2007, Deathly Hallows Part 1 in 2010, and Part 2 in 2011. The finale is where he gets the most screen time, and looking back, he only has positive things to say, especially loving the duels. Harry Potter also made him more open to franchises in general. He played Hades in the poorly reviewed Clash of the Titans films. Then he joined the James Bond franchise with Skyfall in 2012 playing Gareth Mallory, who becomes the new M. He was actually considered for Bond himself back in the GoldenEye days, so this was a full circle moment. He returned for Spectre in 2015 and No Time to Die in 2021, with critics especially praising him for Skyfall. But franchise work didn't mean he was just cashing in for easier paychecks. Everything he did in between those films proved the opposite. In 2008, he gave one of his funniest and one of our favorite performances of his ever in Bruges as a very vulgar crime boss who sends out his 2 hitmen to Bruges, Belgium to wait for their next mission. Even though the character is serious and terrifying, his comedic timing is perfect. And in the very same year, he went right back to more dramatic roles with The Duchess and The Reader. One is a period film where he plays an emotionally distant duke, and the other he plays an older version of a man still haunted by a relationship that scarred his entire life. He also appeared in The Hurt Locker a year after, reuniting with Catherine Bigelow playing a British private military contractor. Around this time, it looked like he was finding a rhythm, prestige roles, franchises, occasional comedy, but Fiennes was always being pulled back to the thing he loved most, theater. After slowing down on stage in the 90s, he returned full force in the 2000s. He performed mostly in London but also on Broadway. He revisited Shakespeare in Coriolanus, Richard II, Julius Caesar, and The Tempest. He tried new things like Ibsen's Brand and Faith Healer, with the latter earning him a Tony nomination for its Broadway run. He also became a patron of the Shakespeare School Festival, helping bring Shakespeare to classrooms across the UK. This wasn't a movie star doing stage work for prestige. Theater was his reset button, his way of reconnecting to the craft. And because of that, it makes perfect sense that his film directing debut would be so closely tied to it. In 2011, he directed and starred in Coriolanus, a modernized take on the Shakespeare tragedy set in a war-torn Balkan landscape. It's a difficult play, political, cold, with a lead character who doesn't want to be liked. Fiennes found directing himself intimidating, especially with not wanting to waste too much time on himself. But the film reviewed well, with critics praising the entire cast. And Fiennes even helped Jessica Chastain land Zero Dark 30 by showing Catherine Bigelow early cuts of his film. As for Fiennes' performance, there's not much to say because he always delivers, with Sir Ian McKellen even saying it was one of his favorite Shakespeare performances on film ever. 2 years later, he directed The Invisible Woman, about Charles Dickens' affair with Nellie Ternan. Instead of the kinder Dickens people imagined, he played him as brilliant yet selfish and deeply human. It was a quieter film than Coriolanus, but showed his instincts as a director gravitated towards emotionally complicated characters. By this point, he had done everything. His career made no sense on paper, except for the one pattern running through the whole thing. Every time you thought you had Ralph Fiennes figured out, he'd show you something new. That's why what came next felt like the biggest surprise yet. In 2014, he starred in Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel as Monsieur Gustave H., the hotel's concierge. It was unlike anything he had ever done. Anderson's worlds already feel like they exist in their own universe, but Fiennes fit into them so effortlessly, you'd think he'd been doing this style of comedy for decades. Gustave is elegant, ridiculously over the top, poetic, and vulgar, and Fiennes nailed every layer, delivering one of the best performances in Anderson's entire filmography.
She's been murdered, and you think I did it.
He earned a Golden Globe nomination, with critics raving about his dry wit and rapid-fire delivery, and the film became the biggest hit of Anderson's career with 4 Oscars. After decades of being known for villains, prestige dramas, and Shakespeare, Ralph Fiennes showed he could be the funniest person in the room and one of the most beloved. And instead of slowing down, he only doubled down. The next decade would prove he still had surprises left and some of his best performances yet to come. The Grand Budapest Hotel seemed to unlock another side of him, comedy. And strangely, this final stretch of his career might be the funniest he's ever been. In 2015, he starred in Luca Guadagnino's A Bigger Splash. It's not a comedy, but Fiennes plays an over-the-top, non-stop talking music producer whose scenes are genuinely hilarious. He took the role because the script said his character expresses himself with dance, something he has never done on film. He said yes immediately and stole the scenes he was in. He kept the momentum going to the next year in the Coen brothers' Hail Caesar. Here he plays a European director stuck trying to teach a cowboy actor proper pronunciation of a line. He's only in a handful of scenes, but one of them is the funniest in the film. He also fully embraced voice acting. In 2016, he voiced Kubo and the Two Strings' villain, the Moon King. The year after, he voiced Alfred in the Lego Batman movie, and in 2020, he voiced the Tiger in Dolittle. But it wasn't all fun and games. He was still chasing difficult roles. In 2018, he directed The White Crow, a biopic about ballet dancer Rudolf Nureyev and his defection from the Soviet Union. Fiennes also acts in it as Nureyev's strict mentor, delivering most of his dialogue in Russian. He originally didn't want to star in it, but when the financiers heard he planned to stay behind the camera, he could see the light fade from their eyes, so he folded and cast himself. With 2 films already behind him, he knew how to balance performance and direction, taking extra takes to protect himself in the edit. Unfortunately, the film didn't review as strongly as his first 2, but he still won a Special Achievement Award for it, and it remains the last film he's directed to date. But even without directing, he stayed incredibly busy through the late 2010s and 2020s. He brought his classic, calm, authoritative presence to 2019's Official Secrets, about whistleblower Catherine Gunn exposing attempts to build support for the Iraq War. In 2021, he was gentler in The Dig, playing the archaeologist leading the Sutton Hoo excavation. And later that year, he surprised everyone with his dive into action in The King's Man, a World War I set prequel where he carried the film so strongly that critics called him the film's saving grace. But the real highlight of this era, one of the best performances of his entire career, came in 2022. In the dark comedy The Menu, he plays Chef Slowick, a world-famous chef overseeing an elite dinner that spirals into something messed up. What he does here is unreal. The performance is controlled, cold, quietly threatening, and theatrical all at the same time. He rarely raises his voice, but every line lands like a knife.
We always cook with love, don't we? Yes, chef! Everyone knows love is the most important ingredient.
3 Michelin star chef Dominique Crenn advised on the film, and Fiennes studied her mannerisms and posture. even learning to cook the dish he prepares on camera. Critics and audiences loved him in it. He earned a Golden Globe nomination and the film became a rare mid-budget hit. It reminded everyone that Fiennes was still at the top of his game. In 2023, he reunited with Wes Anderson for The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, Anderson's Roald Dahl short film anthology. Once again, he slides perfectly into Anderson's storybook world, and hopefully they'll work together more often. But in 2024, he delivered what many consider his most acclaimed performance since Amon Göth, and the two roles couldn't be more different. In Conclave, he plays Cardinal Thomas Lawrence, tasked with overseeing the election of a new pope. Fiennes wasn't the original choice, and he dropped the Italian accent early because it would sound silly coming from him. It was the right call. The film rests almost entirely on his shoulders, built on stillness, patience, and thought, acting through tiny moments of expression and long stretches of silence.
And let him grant us a pope who sins and asks for forgiveness, and who carries on.
Critics called it one of the performances of the year. He became an Oscar frontrunner but ultimately lost to Adrian Brody. But it didn't matter much. Fiennes never felt like someone acting for awards. He just moved on to the next role without skipping a beat. His most recent films include The Return, 28 Years Later, and The Coral, even getting jacked for the first two at age 62. And the whole time he stayed active on stage, taking on Richard III and Macbeth, with more theater productions already lined up. And as for what's next, he'll appear in 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, and will play a younger President Snow in The Hunger Games, Sunrise on the Reaping. And that's really been his career so far. Ralph Fiennes built a career out of never sitting still and always challenging himself. He went from playing one of the most evil villains in cinema to playing the cardinal who helped choose the next pope, with every genre imaginable in between. That's why he's lasted so long as one of the best in the industry. He kept evolving. And that's why he's still one of the most interesting actors alive. So there you have it. Ralph Fiennes' career and all of his best films. What's your favorite role of his? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe, and check out our Patreon for some cool perks. But until next time, have a good one.